Welcome back to part two. See, I had a whole bunch of things. We're gonna see if I can tackle them all. First of all, I think there's an interesting thing about drones. I want to talk about um, big drones, not little drones, not big drone, medium-sized drones. So the Skydios, Skydio, not to be confused with Skydeo, just stupid naming thing. Um, Las Vegas is one of the big poster children for having these unmanned autonomous, I call them like drone in a box. They live in their little container, then they pop out whenever they need to do something. They're pretty much autonomous now. All they do is monitor and stuff. And I got into it with some guy, of course, because this is how most of my topics come about. Is I get into it with some guy on Twitter, and then I don't do it to argue or troll. I do it to see if people can actually, challenge me with the stupid shit that they say. And I listen for little dog whistles. And this guy was like, "We need to expand drone surveillance to lower gun violence." And I'm like, drones aren't going to lower gun violence. And then he just changes the goalposts over and over and over and over and over, and I'm like, drones can't actually react to contact. Drones can't defend themselves. Drones don't have armor. There aren't TAC teams trained. The gun violence here. He's talking about again, like Las Vegas, Nevada. The gun violence isn't bad enough here yet. And this dude's entire profile is sports ball. Just a paragraph of sports ball bullshit. Well, we still have, uniformed officers that can respond. And I'm like, they haven't had to respond to like a real situation. Of course, forgetting that whole thing with the friggin' one or more people in a window that may or may not have had automatic weapons and la-di-da, that concert thing, Bob. Notwithstanding, there hasn't been there's the Route 91 Harvest Festival, in 2017. And then aside from that, there hasn't been, there just isn't a lot that happens in Vegas that doesn't stay in Vegas. And so I think it's funny how it's like, this is going to keep gun violence down, for more drones for surveillance. And it's like, how many people are actually outside running around in Vegas committing gun crimes? And the answer, I think, is not very many. Anyway, so the guy decides after I'm basically agreeing with him. He just doesn't. He's just, again, I guess, just too few brain cells from all the, no doubt, all the alcohol that he drinks. And no amount of me agreeing with him and trying to steer him along this logical path is working, though. And he goes, "I checked one of your posts and you mentioned something called an I-5 corridor, and we don't have that." And I'm like, this is the hill he wants to die on? That, like, the cartels and the gangs can't come to Vegas? Like, and I'm sure everybody likes to, oh yeah, organized crime would defend Vegas. For how long? I know that, like, Daredevil and Punisher and stuff always happens in, Manhattan, but who's to say Vegas actually, like, if Vegas has actually like a private army big enough to really be able to defend itself, or the Las Vegas PD, or Reno Sheriff's Department. Oh, who's to say any of them could really defend themselves if organized crime starts to, rear its ugly head? Are they gonna, partner up with ICE and Homeland and somehow do something about it? Like, acting like Vegas is insulated is kind of really, really strange. And it strikes me as one of those wishful thinking, like, don't you think that XYZ would do something about it? It's usually, don't you think the Hells Angels would, or don't you think XYZ would do something about it? And that's what I saw a lot in Portland, and I can't even get far enough with this guy because he immediately discounts where I'm from and thinks that he's insulated from all of it. But I used to have a friend, and he used to say that would never happen in Portland because they would just pop them all in the head and call it a day. And I'll tell you what, 12, 14 armed people walking around Portland with long rifles, cops would not go within like 4 blocks. I've probably told this story before. They were firebombing a gas station. Cops would not go anywhere near it. Antifa had parked at a school, and they had the guns stashed in their cars. Cops didn't do a single damn thing. They never even called the special response team. Nothing. It was complete and total lawlessness. And then they came back afterwards and arrested a handful of conservatives, who ended up doing some real jail time, which is just crazy because they said they were inciting violence. It had been like a multi-hour war. And you don't realize that, like, if you don't realize this by now, then I don't know what to tell you, but law enforcement has no duty to protect and serve the public. Their duty is to protect and serve themselves. And if Portland had had drones, it wouldn't have mattered. They still wouldn't have done anything. It's the same thing with street lockdowns. Do people get shot and killed at street lockdowns all the time? Cops don't go anywhere near them. Unless there's already a team that happens to be prepped and ready for that specific purpose. Because they have to gather enough police for 60 miles to be able to tackle one street lockdown. Like, the logistics is insane, right? And then if those cops get doxxed, they're toast. Their family's toast by the time they get home, because they live too far to be able to get home in time to be able to protect their families. And that's what happens to anybody who runs into these roadblocks. I think I'm conflating two different events. There's been other multiple street lockdowns with them with long guns too. But I think the one at the school, I'm pretty sure that they had guns at that one too. They definitely had improvised explosives, which, in my opinion, are more dangerous than guns. So the point is that drones wouldn't have done anything, because if you don't train with a TAC team, and I used Max TAC from this game called Cyberpunk as an example, but again, that was just completely over his head, because if it wasn't in one of the football commercials, he's just not going to understand it. Like, you need, for drone like react to contact to work, you need to have a way, so that the drone can detect and dodge bullets. The technology exists, but I don't know why, especially Skydio. Skydio has videos of their own drones being shot down, and they can detect it, and they still don't have their drones get out of the way, which I think is crazy to me, but whatever. Skydio, if you ever want to hire me, I've got about 1 billion ideas that would help you guys not be terrible. It's all in the software, by the way. Their vision is so narrow. They've got their one niche, which is recon, and they just refuse recon and navigation, and they just refuse to expand outside that. And networking capabilities, like drone mesh kind of like a drone RTS game, real-time strategy. Anyway, they your drones and your recon are only as good as your ability to react. And it's unfortunate, again, I guess I haven't been talking to you guys about this. I've just been talking in my own head. But you have to have waterproof drones. I mean, it's just like pissing rain here. There's more water in the horse's yard thingy than I've ever seen. Like, it's just standing water because it's raining so much. It's raining so much that it's just standing water. And it's raining faster than it can go anywhere anymore. And I know, like, you might say, oh, well, I guess it doesn't rain in Vegas. I mean, I think those Skydios are pretty, like, weather and wind resistant. I don't know how dust resistant they are, but I just this whole concept of like them being in Vegas and them having just like metric shit tons of drones, like, surveillance is useless. It's the same thing. They can listen in on all of our phones. They can listen in on all of our phones too, and yet stupid shit keeps happening. They can read everybody's Discords. They can read Telegram. It doesn't matter. Shit keeps happening. Like, their ability to sift through the data and react to the data is just not there. And people don't realize it. Like, yeah, you should maintain, levels of operational security, but and have codes and stuff and assume people are reading and watching everything you do, but people let that seep into like analysis paralysis, where it's like, well, fine, we're just not going to talk about anything anymore. And then they just go overboard, and then they start making it to where nobody else can talk about anything anymore. And then all of a sudden, everything's fine again, and everybody goes back to the hopium and copium and watching sports ball and going to sports bars and all kinds of other stupid shit. And what I want to know is, when are people going to stop thinking that other people are just going to take care of stuff? Like, if you're going to argue with people, if you're going to debate online, if you're going to talk about what you think should happen about gun violence, you need to be ready to go all the way. You can't just have like a limp dick opinion about gun violence and then not be ready to back it up, suspiciously needing more gun violence to be able to back up your gun violence. And he was like, oh, he's trying to be sarcastic. He's like, well, I'm sorry that we don't have armed drones yet. And I'm like, you're a dumb fuck. You're advocating for armed drones, you just don't realize it yet. Like, you're the one that wants drones to stop gun violence somehow, despite there being no evidence in Vegas that drones have stopped any active gun, unless you're going to say that it's preventative. Here we go. I'll ask. That's okay. I think that's a fair question, and I should have asked that. Is there any evidence that mass drone surveillance in Vegas has somehow prevented any gun violence? It's going to say no. No, there's no publicly available evidence that mass drone surveillance with the skyports has directly prevented any specific instances. No, of course not. No, it's been in 2024. And they say it's locating hundreds of suspects. So what? You've found hundreds of suspects. Big fucking deal. Helps officials state the network helps prevent violence within seconds. You can't help prevent violence within seconds. It's fucking retarded. That's impossible. That's a what's the word? It's a double negative. I can't think of the right word right now. It says overall homicides declined or noted third year in a row is 2025, but attribute broadly to multiple factors, not drones. Emphasis remains on response documentation, tactical support rather than proactive prevention of gun violence events. That's because if somebody's going to be an unhinged psychopath, they don't give a shit if drones are flying around. And the reason why they don't give a shit about drones flying around is because there hasn't been a Pavlovian response yet to drone flying around equal bad thing happen. There has to be, and I can't remember which YouTube, I think it was Hard to Hurt, used to talk about how for someone to be scared of something, for someone to respect something, there has to be like some kind of response garnered. And he was talking specifically about like throwing a feint. You can't keep throwing a feint over and over again if there's not potentially like something big coming that has happened that they've decided that they don't like. Do you think meth heads give a shit that there's drones flying around? Do you think fent heads give a shit that drones are flying around? Do you think people that are going through garbage? No, because Judge Dredd's not walking around. And so, do you think illegals driving semis down the freeway with stolen identities and everything, do you think they give a shit that drones are... No, of course not. This whole almost every single apparatus in the US is like security theater. And people, the bad guys, have figured this out ages ago. And we're all still playing by the rules. We're all still trying to, be good Boy Scouts. We're trying to follow the rules and get our tabs and get our ham licenses and get our concealed carries and get our car insurance and get our house insurance. Meanwhile, they're not even paying their bills. They're getting free money from the government. They're stealing cars. We're playing by the rules, and they are stealing everything. We pay for groceries, they steal groceries. We pay for car insurance, we pay for driver's license, we pay for tabs, they steal cars. Like, y'all pay for daycare, they have the Somali Leering Center. Like, there has to be some kind of compromise, and yet, what they tell us is no, you guys, we got to clamp down on your Second Amendment harder. Meanwhile, they're running around with full auto Glockazines with 30-round mags. Like, and then like we worry about surveillance while they just run around in total impunity. The jails are full. The DAs aren't prosecuting anybody on the left or any meth heads or drug heads or gangbangers or illegals. Illegals do the worst things, and I mean the worst things that I cannot describe, things that would make your hands curl involuntarily in anger. Illegals are doing to your children at school, and your teachers and your school apparatus do not have to report it. And when they do report it, they underreport it and they play it down. And then if the person ever does see a judge, the judge doesn't hand him over to ICE. Your kids are being harvested from illegals that flooded over the border. And if you're asking, like, what the end game of this is, I'm glad you asked. The end game, because I've seen this happen in microcosms in Portland and Seattle and Olympia, all up and down the I-5 corridor, is whichever side is like disproportionately intent on defending themselves, they disarm. Whichever side is overwhelmingly intent on attacking wholesale, they don't go anywhere near, and they try to keep the two sides relatively balanced. This is a common tactic. This was well documented in Charlottesville. They get both sides relatively equal so they can burn each other out, and then the cops can come in afterwards. And with drones, they can monitor this easier because it's easier than the helicopter. They know Antifa goes after helicopters like crazy now. Again, with near total impunity, there was cells of illegals, shining lasers at helicopters. And does anyone know whatever happened to any of them? They were caught federally, but do we know if anything happened? No, it just got shushed under the radar. And if it's not really well documented, the consequences aren't broadcast, and it's gonna happen again, and people are gonna think it's okay. And you talk to the AI about it, and the AI doesn't want to talk about it because it assumes that you have bad intentions, and you try to tell the AI that you want to be able to defend against it. And sometimes the AI calms down, but it sometimes doesn't, and the AIs are just like super sketchy about whether or not they're going to report anything. Because AIs are so like knee-jerk to like you're going to do something bad. And so you have to be really careful how you qualify it. And I've had some AIs stop me before and be like, hey, before we go any further, you're not planning on doing anything bad, are you? I go, no, I want to be able to defend myself. And it's like, oh, okay, that's totally reasonable. I'm like, okay, that was a little scary. So, drones eliminate a lot of that. But like, okay, they see a street lockdown, they leave it alone. They don't give a shit. They don't care if 10 people call 911. They're not going to do anything about it. But 10 people report, a conservative walking down the road. They're going to be on that like flies on shit. Like, it's this massive, like, disproportionate reaction to where, like, they don't consider, this gal burned a restaurant down the other day. And they were like, it's okay. She didn't burn the restaurant down on purpose. And she had a lighter in a garbage can looking for stuff through the garbage can. And she burnt the damn restaurant down. Thankfully, nobody was hurt. And this is the issue with, like, arson. Which, again, in my opinion, arson, much worse than, much more dangerous than firearms. Explosives, much more dangerous than firearms. Arson, way easier to arson things. I would argue that there's a bajillion times more arsons than there is firearms-related violence. They don't do jack shit. They don't do jack shit about arsons. And they, whoops. Oh, mental health. Oh, she was having a mental health episode. Oh, it was an accident. Oh, if it had been a conservative with firearms, they'd be drafting up 50 new friggin' bills to ban friggin' firearms tomorrow. But, Bic lighter, they know they can't do shit about Bic lighters. And they know they can't do shit about friggin' homeless. They know they can't do shit about mental health. Because they don't have any way of involuntarily locking these people up and admitting that they don't have a solution, which is what they need to do. They need to just admit that they don't have a solution and lock these people up involuntarily. I don't care. And if they refuse to sober up, that's what happens. And then you let them out and you put a chip in them. And the second they get high again, it calls the mental health crisis people, and they come and tase them and involuntarily lock them up and, I don't know, throw them in cryo or something. I don't know. Make them work on a work camp with no drugs. Like, it's crazy to me how people don't have the stomach for the response to actually have like a clean and safe society. Just like this guy didn't have the stomach for like, yeah, you're going to need armed drones and you're going to need attack team that can actually respond fast enough. Those drones, they react really fast. They still don't react fast enough. Because I don't think, for all the cool tech demos that Skydio does, and I know Skydio has military contracts, I still don't know if they've played The Division. Go play The Division and then tell me about it, right? Like, hold on a second. Alright, I'm slowly charging my radios. I know I told you guys that in the last diddly do. The storm is... What is acting? Where are you? Oh, I know why. No? Hello? It's acting like this radio is charged. Are you charged, Mr. Radio? You are not charged. Stop acting like you're charged, you crazy radio. This radio is silly Billy. It does not want to act like it's charging. Huh. It's good this thing has an expanded battery and can last freaking years without a charge. Where is my other big extended battery? Is it this bag? Hello? Yep. Get over here. Dude, expanded batteries are, for radios, are legit the way to go. I was talking to my friend about this earlier. Standard batteries are like lighter, but you gotta watch them. They do not hold a charge nearly as long as an expanded battery does. And I guess it stands to reason, it's kind of obvious, but sorry, I got the hiccups. That if a battery is half as big, it's not going to last as much as a battery that's twice as big. So, it's funny, I checked, every single one of my small batteries was dead. And every single one of my expanded batteries had half a charge left. Where was I? Drones. I don't know. People do not want us to talk about what has to happen, what's going to have to happen, what is going to happen. And that's this little football bro, sports bro, thinks that having drones is going to somehow marginalize gun violence, and it's just simply not. That's the bottom line. It's not. It's not, and there's no evidence to support that it would. Period. So I think that's exactly the reason. Side note, I think that's exactly the reason why nothing's going to improve. Nothing's going to improve because the longer we wait, the more dramatic the response is going to have to be to snap us back. And right now, Christian Warrior Training has been doing video after video after video of how we're in urgent red critical of church attacks. And he's right. He's like, I literally can't get a video out without there already being another church attack. Like, church attacks in the US are through the roof. And he said he thinks we just have to make it until Easter. But traditionally speaking, like, on Easter is when the biggest attacks happen. And so if you can't talk to your church about that, you're gonna have a really difficult time. Because if they can't accept that, they're not gonna make it. They're going to become a target. And that's just unfortunate. It's just the unfortunate reality. Meanwhile, again, our schools are just harvesting our kids in every way imaginable to evil, and people aren't doing anything about it. Churches are under attack. People aren't doing anything about it. One of these days, someone is just gonna go too far. It's gonna just be so far beyond the pale. And this last one that I read, it was bad. It was really bad. And I think there's two points here. What I think the people coming over the border are just completely degenerate, feral animals. That's problem number one. And then problem number two is the left is covering for them. And it's this, and Orange Man is just not doing enough. He needs to pull out the stops. He needs to let his teams cook, and then he needs to have a second set of teams running counterintelligence. If he does not do that, things are going to correct even more. He either needs to correct it now, which is going to be painful, or it's going to have to get corrected even more painfully later. And this is why, again, the Christians that believe in pre-trib rapture are just so full of hopium and copium that they can't function. And it's the same thing with the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's just like, you just can't function. And this is what you came up with to just be able to make it from day to day. Or the boomers saying, all my stuff's paid off. Like, good for you. All your stuff's paid off. Good for you. How long do you think that's going to last? How long do you think until you're the next one getting taxed? Because they're taxing all the millionaires. All the millionaires leave. They're going to compensate. They're going to have to tax everybody else. They're saying you can't buy new modern firearms. How long is it until you can't own? It's only the change of one word from purchase to own, to be in possession of. Like, every day this slides, the reaction is going to be, it's going to have to be more severe to correct it. And people say, oh, voting is worthless. Well, I get it. Like, even when we do successfully vote something in, they go against it anyway. But mark my words, like, being aware is already going to put you a step ahead. Because at least you'll be able to rally, group up, find a buddy, work on comms, work on radios, find a radio, find a drone, something. Practice with your drones, find somewhere to go hiking, practice your GPS. Somebody to hike with, somebody to do something with, somebody to food savor stuff with, somebody to have a podcast with. I don't know. Somebody to 3D print stuff with, somebody to play with batteries, play with solar, and you're going to need a second person. And you just learn better when you have a buddy and you have to prove things, and you practice something and you want to train with something, you want to train with a buddy, and then you want to practice, and somebody that you can throw the phones in the other room and have a real conversation. Like, I wonder how many people have never had like a real conversation, like especially with the leftists and the rhinos. Like, they're so piss scared to accept that we have a problem. Oh, they just want to come here and work. They just want to come here and work and be left alone. Yeah, then all of a sudden, like, half our shit's in Spanish. Like, and what do you think they're going to do when friggin' radical Islam takes over? Do you think the Catholics, I mean, and I don't mean the friggin' Spain Catholics, I mean like Spanish Catholics, do you think they really have a plan? Or do you think their plan is to just go back to Mexico where they know, although it's kind of ironic because Middle Easterners are completely indistinguishable from Spanish people in Mexico until they say something. Which again is the point of this book called I'm forgetting the name of it. Is it Dark Ages 2020? Oh yeah, Dark Ages 2020. By the same guy that did the Conflicted stuff and works with Southern Prepper 1. But I had a boss that was Iranian, and he used to go down to Mexico all the time, and even the other Mexicans couldn't tell the difference. And so, I mean, although I'm sure they could just say, hey, say something. And then, I don't know. Here's the problem. Every other ethnicity on the planet doesn't have a problem with wholesale extermination. We're the only ethnicity that sees it as something wrong. That sees something wrong with extermination. Right? That's the first solution to every other culture. Is just exterminate everybody that doesn't line up. All through history, it's time and time again, they just immediately go to extermination. All of a sudden, one day, everybody wakes up and they grab their They grabbed their machetes. I was like, uh-oh, all of a sudden 1 million people don't make it. And I'm not saying that's good, and I'm not saying that's right, but that's what you have to prepare for, and that's what every other ethnicity is going to do. So if radical Islam takes over, I could see the Espanols going back to Mexico and just cleaning up. And if their culture doesn't have the numbers, if any culture doesn't have the numbers, they're just going to have to capitulate or get exterminated, which is what happened to the Assyrians and the Yazidi and the Kurds and every other group that doesn't have the numbers. There's more. I just can't think of them all. I guess to maybe to wrap this up, I've had 2 nights in a row of shit hits the fan dreams, and that's a bad sign. 2 nights ago, it was my wife and I got chased out of a school by a mob, and then we had to run all around to like get as much as we could to go in our van. We had a bug out van in my dream apparently, and the hood, I remember really distinctly, like the hood was up and we were being chased all around, and I remember I only had like 1 extra mag, and there's like 500 of them, and we went to one last shed, and she was just she wanted to grab all the lights that she possibly could, and all of our lights were in there, and she wanted to grab all of our lights. She wanted to have as many lights as possible, and so we were running back to the van with like the last haul. And one of the guys that was in the mob to our anxiety like comes out. He didn't chase us. He went and found the van. And then I thought for sure that he had sabotaged the van and was going to just walk out and leave us to die. And I had the keys because it's like, oh no, do we have the keys? But I had the keys. They were in a plastic baggie. And I threw the keys to my wife, and the hood was down of the car, and I said, did you sabotage the van, to the guy? And he didn't answer me. Kind of like, he said something like, you'll find out. And we just kind of started the van up, and the van started, and then I woke up. And that was the first dream. The second dream so that was 2 nights ago. Last night, I had a dream that Islam terrorist illegal was driving down I-5 with like these extra protrusions that in my dream I called knuckles, were pointing out the sides of his semi-truck, and he was using these knuckles to smash into vehicles as he was driving by, just destroying every vehicle that he could on the freeway as he drove down the freeway. And I had happened to be on the freeway going to get some kind of thing that was like a rechargeable thing, and I set the rechargeable thing on the car, and you can't drive worth shit in dreams, and so I went flying past the car. And I was just going to take the next ride and go back and actually, try to, drive my car in the dream again a little bit slower. And this guy was just, and I could see his face just as clear as day, and his mouth was just open, like just unhinged, like maniacally in this horrific thing right out of a meme or a cartoon or something, just this unhinged, like, jihadist. And he was stopped and he was looking at me and he was taunting me, and nobody was doing anything about it. And then he was at a stoplight, and the stoplight took forever to turn because I knew exactly down to the intersection exactly where he was, because this was a real part of the freeway, as a real part of the intersection of where I really used to live, and this traffic light always took forever, and he was at this traffic light forever. And I'll never forget, I waited for the truck to drive by so he didn't see me, and then I used my phone to take pictures of his cab and to take pictures of the back of his truck and the license plate and take pictures of these modifications he'd made so I could try to, tell somebody about it. And everybody else got mad at me for taking pictures, saying that I was going to just incur his wrath even more. And then I woke up. And goodness only knows what kind of whacked out dream I'm going to have tonight. But I'm not even necessarily like thinking about this stuff. I'm more like, I want to get started on my garden, and I want to get started on more seeds, and I want to work on my resume, and I want to, get the 3D printer repaired. I'm not thinking about freaking jihadis driving down the freeway destroying vehicles, but apparently my brain is. And I feel like that's like my subconscious's way of telling me that, like, it's trying to prepare me, because you don't know what you're going to do. You don't know what you're going to do. You're either going to fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, or, and then the secret fifth one, as I call it, just freak out and just become unhinged. And I think there's this thin veneer that we all have that separates us, like, in our brains from just, it's like a very thin layer of software over us that, like, makes us human and not animals. And this empathy, this compassion that we have for people who look human but aren't. I mean, technically it's like they're a human being, I guess. But there isn't enough in there for them to be compatible with the human race. They're feral animals that happen to loosely look like people. And boy howdy, if you talk like this, oh, well, you're othering them and you're trying to desensitize yourself for what you have to do, blah, blah, blah. No, this is called noticing patterns. It's called noticing patterns. And I'm not talking about any single ethnicity, because every ethnicity has these ferals. It's something to do with the software breaking down. And they're just animals running around. And they, for some reason, always happen to be running around with pit bulls. Or Rottweilers. But usually pit bulls. And, again, it's not any ethnicity. There's problems. There's problems with every ethnicity when this software, the software breaks down. And they become animals. And I don't think there's anything that can reinstall that software. And society doesn't have the compassion to just be like, well, that thing looks like a human, but it's snarling. It's snarling at me. And we tried to chain it up, and it tried to bite through its arm, so I don't think that thing is human. Its software is gone. And I think that's the problem with all these people that are their brains are fried with the drugs, or their brains are fried from being like trafficked for so long, or they're shell shocked from the war. And it's like, sometimes there's a little bit there, and if you could just keep them in a safe environment, they could kind of bumble along, you know? Like, it's, I don't know how we get there though. I don't know how society gets there. I think it's just going to take something horrible. Like another 9/11 times 1,000. And just something that the media can't just swoop away, like the stupid Chinese spy balloons they couldn't bury, or something like the party balloon on the Texas border that was going to shut airlines down for 10 freaking days. Whatever that was, Marv talks about that every night. And he is correct to be talking about that. He said this really interesting thing last night. He said, you usually find the truth out really, like, basically immediately. And then as the narrative kicks in, the truth basically becomes like impossible to find again. That's why I used to like screenshot every article, because the way the algorithm works, they can bury anything. And he says the truth comes out in the first couple hours and then basically gets buried in it forever. And they keep trying to distract people with UFOs, and they keep trying to distract people with these forever wars, and people keep trying to say like Iran's surrendered, and Iran's this and Iran's that. It's like, they are not surrendering, my dudes. I don't know. So I don't know. I feel like there was some other wider point that I wanted to make, but this all feels, I guess, maybe so defeating. And maybe what I'll say is keep putting seeds in the ground and keep training with your stuff. And I know it's hard. Like, I almost, this is going to sound really kind of stupid because I'm a big hypocrite, I think, but there almost needs to be like recertification, like prepper recertification, where it's like you have to go like do your land nav quals, go do your radio quals, go do your medical quals, like every year, because we tend so much to like do something right one time or 2 times or 3 times and then never do it again, like GPS and stuff. It's like you like do like a bunch of really successful GPS land navs, or you do some like successful medical stuff, then you just never touch it again. Like, and I know it's hard because without money and without being in an official program, it's hard to get in on it. But I think if I was ever going to do my own bug out weekend, I think honestly what it would be is it would be like a cut all the bullshit and all the stupid LARPing stuff, and it would just literally be spend 4 hours get your wilderness survival, spend 4 hours, get your land nav, spend 4 hours, get your pistol and rifle requalified, get some new stuff like some drone qualifications, some radio qualifications, and they'd be like your little merit badges. And every year, once a year, you just go get recertified. Because I shit you not, like, you want to know something crazy? And it was watching a StarCraft 2 streamer, of all things, and he says just some of the most outlandishly bonkers shit. And he was talking about giving women CPR with the defib paddles, and that's something that I talk about in my newbie prepper book. But I had just completely forgot. Not that you've got to cut some clothing off, and people are going to be looky-loos, and it's a big problem, and some Karen's going to try to, arrest you for essaying, the gal or whatnot. And there's a lot of really problematic issues there. Because the underwire and things and the way electricity from the defib paddles. But I had I remembered all of that. But I missed the last CPR class. I've missed the last couple CPR classes because they were at stupid times, and I just was like, I was over it. But I forgot that, like, you've got to have one defib paddle to the left of the heart, and one defib paddle basically on the side, because you're trying to get the electrical current through the heart. I had completely forgot that. And you know why I think I completely forgot that, besides the fact that I don't train it over and over and over and over and over, is because in all the movies, they show the person doing 2 paddles, like one on each side of, like, above the rib cage, basically. And I don't know how that started, or if people just thought that looked cool. But then the other thing, as I was reading up on this to make sure I remembered, is somebody said, and then a bunch of other people chimed in, that none of them trained on female CPR dummies. And that blew my mind. In fact, I had never even seen a female CPR dummy. They exist, and I think everybody is just so shy that, or maybe they're really just too expensive, that nobody has trained on a female CPR dummy. And yes, it is crazy problematic to do CPR, to do defib paddles on a gal. It is. You have to have a pair of titanium shears with you. And I don't know how many people actually walk around with that. You can fit it in a really small IFAK in a cargo pocket, but they're not discreet. If they're in a little mini IFAK with a tourniquet. But yeah, you've got a lot of problems. You've got everyone with cell phones. You got people not knowing what you're doing. And you've got the fact that you've got some gal at their just most vulnerable spot. And you've got people who are just absolute raging perverts. And you've got people who are with bystander syndrome, and they're just going to sit there and stare with their mouth open, and they're going to get their phones out, and they're going to do all the things. And also, like, the other thing I forgot is you can't have other people touching them when you're doing the defib paddles either. And so it's just like, how do you, you have to conscript somebody who is big enough to, I don't know, take everyone's phones and friggin' smash them or stick them in a storm drain or toss them over a fence or something. How do you do that? How do you manage that? If a Karen is bugging you, how do you convince the Karen that you know what you're doing and then say, okay, well, if you care about this girl or this gal, whatever she is, this grandma, then go take everyone's phones away. Like, if you care about her privacy, go take everyone's phones away, or go hold up a jacket, or go find the biggest guy you can and tell him that you need help and that there's a bunch of perverts. Like, while I'm trying to, while I'm waiting for someone to go bring me the damn defib paddles. And there's a lot of these YouTube channels that just won't even address it. And and then a lot of people in the comments are like, how are you supposed to save a gal's life if you're worried about these 100 other things? While ironically, circling this back around, you've got these, there's a moth in here, it's driving me crazy. Well, you've got these raging pervert ferals running around doing whatever they want. How do you reconcile that? Right? And then a lot of people said, well, fuck it, why even try to save anybody's life? Just let the gal die. And there was people saying that I would just let the gal die so I don't get in trouble. And it was just like, you're fucking insane. So I don't know. Society is cooked, and these are things that if you would sit and think about it, you'd realize, like, man, I have real serious gaps. But you forget, like stuffing a wound and like wrapping a wound, like halo bandages and decomp needles. I'm like, it takes a good 4 to 6 hours to review every single medical thing that there is to review, because there's so much. There's so much radio shit, so much GPS shit. Meanwhile, my dumbass keeps forgetting to even put the little piece of film over my GPS to protect it, and I'm pretty sure that I scuffed it up even worse the other day, and I feel like an absolute jackass. And that's like one of my favorite pieces of kit, whereas they still haven't made a perfect radio. I think if they would make a perfect radio, everybody would have gone to it by now. And these friggin' TYTs, I love the hell out of those TYTs, man. These MD3 90 plus 10 watts. I love the hell out of those radios. They're probably my favorite radios, dare I say. But they just don't work right. One of them just doesn't work right. And that shit fucks me up. And it's so frustrating to me that there isn't an easy way for me to get those radios back to them, for them to repair them. And that's the same thing it is with a lot of tech now. And that's, again, I'm going back to what I started, I think, my last topic, which was you guys have got to simplify your preps, especially your tech. You've got to simplify your tech. And I just watched Brush Beater, and he was just talking about it, talking about how he wants all of his stuff to use the same connectors and use the same antennas and use the same, because then it means it uses the same charging cable, and it means it's going to use the same, connection ports for his I'm calling it ComTac, but I can't think of the right earmuffs, right? Because that shit's expensive. It adds up so bad. And the thing is, like, do I like these AR5RMs? Yeah, I think they're great radios. They've got some shortcomings. I found where the damn scan button was. They just changed the icon. But then it was kind of weird. It wasn't picking up NOAA, which is very suspicious. But does that mean someday I'm going to go try to pry the chip off my Yaesu in Minecraft so I can use it for FRS and GMRS and MERS? I don't know. The ship kind of sailed for times when that would have been super helpful, unfortunately. What's also nuts, though, side note, is the Yaesu kept its charge perfectly, I think. I can't see because this thing's backlight is ass. But at least it's not LED. That's the other thing, like LCD screens for radios just hit different. Because you can see them at night with a flashlight. And with the new LEDs, or whatever I don't know, whatever you want to call these, like, they just shut off and then the screen's off. I don't know, it just hits different. It's kind of like why they haven't very much made dumb phones with the new batteries that could just like last a week. And it's like they have. It's just that nobody uses them because everybody needs smart shit on everything now. As your bank requires a smartphone, and parking your car in a parking lot requires a smartphone, and anyway, blah blah blah. All that is to say, try to simplify your preps. Try to simplify your responses to everything. Challenge yourself. Be honest with yourself about what your deficiencies are. I heard people say, like, get used to not having a refrigerator. I'm like, that is ludicrously impractical for like 99.9% of people, but that's just kind of the weird bias that some people have. Like, okay, well, since you learned to survive without a fridge, doesn't mean the rest of us. That's not the top of my list. I got to learn how to survive without a 3D printer. Talk about annoying. It's like 2 is 1 and 1 is none, but like if you're poor, you're not getting a second 3D printer. I'm going to tell you that much. Let alone getting a second computer, right? Because goodness knows freaking CPUs, GPUs, RAM, motherboards, all through the roof. So, anyway, I'm getting super tired, and I appreciate all of you. And this seems to be a good length. So, if any of you fellow YouTubers are out there and you're mad at me because I haven't been watching your channels or I haven't been commenting, I try as much as I can, but I haven't been dealing with my own channel either. I need to finish my video game this weekend. So, I apologize. I might do a live. We'll see how I'm feeling. And take a little break from my voice. Drink some of my tea. We'll see. Anyway, I'll talk to you all later. Bye.